Welcome back to School of Scent. The weather is getting warmer, I've got my snazzy jacket on, and class is in session. With spring coming up, just like how you will change your clothing, you'll also need to change your scent game. Usually you go for brighter fragrances. There are versatile scents that work all year round, and there are general warm weather fragrances that work both in spring and summer. But in my opinion, a truly specialized spring fragrance focuses on prominent green and floral notes. But hey, regardless, I asked you guys on Instagram, what is your #1 spring fragrance? I went through them and personally picked out what I think are the most specialized specifically for spring, and I'm going to rank them in my own personal order from the worst to best, giving them ratings out of 10 for each review. Make sure to leave a comment below what your #1 spring fragrance is. Let's get into it. At number 10, we have a classic, Montblanc Legend, the original. Montblanc Legend is a simple fragrance. It's a lot of lavender, which is good for spring. It's powdery, musky, extremely safe. It has the same DNA as Abercrombie & Fitch Fierce. This lasts about 6 hours with a soft projection, and I find it very linear. I don't really think this is mind-blowing at all. I think it's a good option if you're in your school years, you want an affordable daily wear scent. If you like Montblanc Legend because you're nostalgic for it, I would recommend you save up and upgrade to Parfum de Marly's Percival. Very similar DNA, but it's got at least double the performance and it's much higher quality, and it's one of my biggest compliment getters. This may give you an occasional compliment, but overall I give this a 6 out of 10. At number 9, I'm glad somebody brought this fragrance up. It's Salvatore Ferragamo Aqua Essenziale Blue. As some of you have guessed, this is a blue fragrance, but what makes this stand out is, first of all, its affordable price point, and the fact that it's relatively sweet. It's got a lot of tonka bean in here, but then it's got the usual fresh notes like lavender and broxton. It smells fresh out of the shower like other blue fragrances. Decent performance, 6 hours with a soft projection. My main gripe with this is the fact that the performance is limited. I wish it projected a little bit louder, but hey, if you want a cheap option, you could probably wear this all year. Good for spring also. Aqua Essenziale Blue, I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. Number 8, we have got Montblanc Individual. I always say this fragrance is Yop if it wasn't annoying. This is an incredibly safe fragrance that gives off a laundry detergent vibe. It's very clean and powdery. It's got this iconic raspberry note in here. It's one of these fragrances, if you really want to blind buy something, this is a good one to go for. When you've tried out a lot of different fragrances, you're unlikely to find this mind-blowing, but it's a good daily option, especially in spring. I'm still gonna give Individual a 7 out of 10. Number 7 is probably one of this brand's best fragrances. This is Lacoste Blanc. What makes Lacoste White so good is the fact that it's not only just affordable, it's got decent performance of 6 hours with a soft projection. This does need some heat, but I think it's good for the spring because it has some earthy and denser notes like leather and suede mixed with white florals, overall making this a very bright, piercing but also unique fragrance. I've never quite smelled anything else like this, and it's got one of the better performances in the Lacoste brand. Overall, I give Lacoste Blanc an 8 out of 10. Number 6 is a popular cologne fragrance from the House of Prada, Luna Rosa Carbon. Prada saw the success from Dior Sauvage and they wanted a slice of that pie. They shamelessly copied that fragrance, but at least they put their own twist on the DNA. Prada Luna Rosa Carbon is Dior Sauvage, that fresh out the shower blue DNA, but it's not as annoying with the pepper notes like some people find with Sauvage. I personally love black pepper, but this instead goes for a more smooth, clean, bright lavender notes. I think this would be a great springtime option. It's extremely versatile and safe, gets you some compliments, lasts a good amount of time, at least 8 hours with a moderate projection. This does feel like a safer Sauvage and isn't necessarily being unique. Overall, I give it an 8 out of 10. At number 5, this next fragrance, in my opinion, is designed for the milder weather in both autumn and spring. I'm talking about Hugo Boss Bottled Intense, the Eau de Parfum. The best thing about this fragrance is that it revives a classic DNA. The original Boss bottle didn't last long enough, only lasted about 4 hours, whilst this improves the performance by at least double. 8 hours with a soft projection. This is still versatile, it's more dense than the original, and it creates the iconic apple pie DNA of Boss Bottled through a combination of apple, cinnamon, and vanilla, but then balances it out with some freshness, mainly from woody notes, which is a great representation for spring. Obviously, this is a very safe DNA and a lot of people know it, but I appreciate that this exists. I'm gonna give it overall an 8 out of 10. Number 4, an improvement on the Eau de Toilette, we have Dolce & Gabbana's King Eau de Parfum. I think this is a little bit slept on. It was released in 2019, and because the warm weather season is already past us then, I think this year is going to be a lot more popular. It smells strangely futuristic. It has a lot of synthetic notes in here that primarily focus on fruits, primarily fig, and it also has some power behind it with patchouli and woody notes. Overall, it feels like it's recreating the bubblegum DNA, but in a more modern and masculine way. This fragrance is pushing the envelope. It has excellent performance of 10 hours of moderate projection, and a lot of people prefer this over the Eau de Toilette, which I didn't actually think was too bad of a fragrance. Overall, this is getting an 8.5 out of 10. The number 3 spot is going to be controversial. You'll either completely agree with me or you'll think I've lost my marbles. I'm talking about Yves Saint Laurent's Kuros. I'm glad someone brought this up. This fragrance is still being sold by YSL, presumably because it's still a top seller. It's definitely polarizing. This stuff is vile. If you've never smelled this before, it's a combination of a clean, classic barbershop soapy DNA from the 1980s combined with animalic, dirty notes like civet, which back in the day used to be from the anal gland of a civet cat. That should give you an idea of what kind of fragrance this is. This has excellent performance of at least 10 hours, and it's a throwback to the 80s when men were more rugged and masculine, and back when men also used to smoke a lot more, so they needed stronger fragrances like this to cover up the stench of cigarettes. I think this is a masterpiece. It's one of my most often worn fragrances, but I've yet to get a compliment with it, but I do not mind. I'm giving this a 9 out of 10. Number 2, I think most people's spring list will have this on here. It is Creed's Green Irish Tweed. Green Irish Tweed has also been around since the 80s, but don't worry, this is a lot more wearable. The idea of this fragrance is that it reminds you of a green Irish spring field. If that doesn't sound like a spring fragrance, I don't know what does. This has the bright grassy note from something called lemon verbena, as well as having a dense, soapy quality to it. It's very fresh, easy to wear all year round, easy signature material, and I think it's one of Creed's best. I think it's definitely still worth the money, lasts a good amount of time, at least 10 hours, but it can be replicated by Davidoff's Cool Water, which took inspiration from this. Overall, I'm gonna give it a very sensible score of 9 out of 10. For the number 1 spot, I don't like to throw this word around often, but this is a masterpiece. This is Terre d'Hermes, the Eau de Toilette. This is another iconic spring fragrance. I don't think the new release by Hermes H24 can beat this. This is still a top seller for Hermes since 2006. It combines orange with earthy vetiver and smooth woods. It smells like you're spraying a professional masculine forest on yourself. There's still nothing else on the market that smells quite like this. This is incredibly high quality, excellent performance of at least 12 hours. This is signature material in my opinion. I think you can wear it at Eau de Toilette all year round, but even more specialized for spring is the Eau Intense Vetiver Flanker, which I think isn't as safe as this, but I still think it's excellent. If you still haven't tried Terre d'Hermes, I highly recommend you do so, and I'd like to know your opinion on this. Do you think this deserves the number 1 spot? I do. I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. And that concludes the video, guys. What are your thoughts on this list? Do you think there should have been something else on here? Make sure to look out for our upcoming course on Skillshare called Fragrances 101, and check out the last video we uploaded where I reviewed 10 of your fragrance collections. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Class dismissed.